Ulrike Seminati is now a global leadership and communication coach, but she began as an administrative assistant and was a C-level executive when she left industry to open her own consulting firm. She provides thoughtful, pragmatic suggestions to help us move from procrastination to action. This is definitely an episode I know I'm going to find myself returning to when I'm feeling a little bit stuck or can't quite put my finger on why I'm not getting going on that project that needs to be done. Hello and welcome to the Communicative Leader, hosted by me, Dr. Leah OH. My friends call me Dr. O. I'm a professor of communication and a leadership communication expert. On the Communicative Leader, we're working to make your work life what you want it to be. Thank you for joining us today. I'm so excited to chat with you about leadership and avoiding procrastination. But before we dive in, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Maybe the path you took to get where you are today?
Yes, so I'm coming actually from the corporate world. I've spent 23 years and I started as an assistant and climbed up the whole career ladder until I became a C-level executive. And during these different stages, I was obviously then having all the different experiences as a junior manager, middle manager, and also a very senior executive looking at an international organization from the top. And that came then when I thought, now I have to change something in organizations, because wherever I've worked, people are mostly unhappy and are not feeling seen, are not feeling heard, are not feeling like their ideas are taken into account. And in the worst case, they're not even treated as humans, at least not in their eyes. And I thought we have to change something. And so I stepped out of the corporate world 4 years ago and shaped my own company, because I also made the experience that when you come in as an external expert, you are listened to much more than if you're an internal expert. And this is why I shaped my own company. And today I am giving trainings, one-on-one coachings, and I also do consulting in terms of communicating with impact, leading with authenticity. And ultimately that leads really to leading change in an effective way, which is what every leader has to do every day.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and you hit on so many important things and really kind of infuriating things at points, because like you said, not treated like humans. And I do think we treat our technology better than we treat our employees often, right? We see that as a bigger and a more important investment than our human resources. And then also the fact that, unfortunately, like you said, a lot of when you're external, you are listened to, you are seen as an expert, even if you have that same degree of training and expertise internally. So we, hitting on those things that can make being an employee so challenging.
Yeah.
So we know that you are this internationally renowned leadership communication expert. You're a consultant and a productive leader, right? You're juggling multiple tasks, and maybe some of these are even competing demands. And you don't get here by dragging your feet or constantly missing or pushing deadlines. So considering this, what can you kind of tell us about the intersection of leadership and procrastination?
I think it has a lot to do with each other because at the end, we all procrastinate every day. And we also all lead every day, or try to lead. First of all, we lead ourselves every day, that's for sure. And then we also lead others, even if we don't have big teams, but you are operating or cooperating with your colleagues, for example, with peers and with people around you. And we always can influence others and help them achieve something. And that is leading to me too. So when it comes to procrastination and leadership, I think it's extremely important for any leader or all of those who want to be leaders that it's clear that it's about that one of the core things that you have to do is creating trust and relationships with people. And trust and relationship is always related to keeping your word, sticking to your words, being consistent, showing some continuity. And this is what is most of the times total opposite of procrastination.
Yes.
Because it's about often over-promising, for example, not sticking to your word, postponing things eternally. And it's important that you stick to your word as a leader and for yourself, because also you tell yourself off when you do not stick to your word. We all do that automatically without realizing it. And that doesn't help us to be fully present, to be in our full power and all of that. So there's a lot around procrastination I could talk about. But I think the most important thing is to understand, why do I procrastinate? First of all, to admit that I procrastinate.
Yeah.
And if people look back at just what they have done over the past 4 hours, for example, just look at your past 4 hours. What have you procrastinated on? Which email did you not send out and say, I do this later or I do it tomorrow? Which meeting have you not put into your calendar because for some reason you shy away from doing that? And sometimes and often we procrastinate on tasks where we do not even know why. Obviously, there are tasks we don't like, and then it's obvious. But there are much more tasks where it's not obvious at all, where it's very clear why we have to do that, and still we procrastinate on that. And that is something I'm really working on, to find that out and help people find out why they do that, against all logic, against all the rationale that we have around our goals and next steps and all of that, why we still do not take action accordingly. And by this, we are not showing the best example. We do not walk the talk for others. And this is how it ties in with leadership.
Yeah. Yeah, you hit on so many important points. And what I'm hearing is, and we know this is leadership, kind of experts and scholars, is the importance of role modeling. And that so often that's overlooked because they think, no, it's what I'm saying. And I told you to do this, but then what are my actions telling you, right? So we think of that in the work group. We can think about that at home with kids in the community. So really, really important things. And another thing, I had never thought of procrastination as overpromising. And I really like that take on it. So I'm gonna ask you a little bit more about this in this follow-up question. You've kind of touched on some of these, but I'm wondering, in your experiences, either when you were working in industry in these different positions or more recently as a consultant with your organization, what do you see most formal leaders, these titled managers, directors, supervisors, what do you see them doing in terms of engaging or managing their procrastination?
I think most people, normal people, let's say, who have not really reflected on that topic yet deeply, just act out of their own perspective, which is always a limited perspective. So you and I, we also have limited perspectives of exactly the same thing. We might have a different opinion, a different perspective. And most of the times, and most people do not think about that. They just take this perspective as the reality, and they take for granted that everybody else will see the same reality and therefore fully understand what they are doing or saying, or what they want others to do, for example, because for them, it's crystal clear. Yeah. And I think that is the point, that we are acting out of our own belief system, which has been formed by our upbringing, by our personality styles as well. All of that plays a role in how we see a situation and what is logical for us, a logical next step, what is attractive to us, why a goal is interesting, why an action should be taken, for example. And we believe that for everybody else, it's the same. And I think that is the point where leaders who do not go this extra mile into really leading others from another perspective, where they just stick to their own. And this is how communication becomes inefficient as well and not impactful at all. Why? Because they communicate out of their perspective. And that means that the messages, whatever they say, whatever they write, is perfectly tailor-made to the one and single person who will never get it, because it's tailor-made to themselves and not to anybody else.
Yeah. Oh, I really like that. And I think too, as my master's PhD, all in communication, and the simplest thing we can do is consider the audience. And that's often the last thing that we do when we've exhausted all of these other ways of trying to explain and provide direction and instruction. And then it's like, okay, where are you? How do I get there? And if we started there, life would be so much easier. But like you said, it's challenging to step outside of your perspective, one, and then two, to really consider others' perspectives around you. Excellent. So our last question, we kind of talked about what most leaders do. And I bet you've had the experience of working with some really great leaders, like the ones who say, okay, coach me, I want to get better. What do I need to do? So what is that gold standard? What are they doing in terms of kind of interacting with procrastination and managing it in a healthy, productive way?
Hmm. So for me, there are two dimensions into that.
Okay.
There's the I dimension,
Okay.
or the being, you can also call it, and there's the we dimension, which is rather the doing.
Mm-hmm.
And most leaders stay in the we dimension and in the doing, because also they have been trained and told so often you have to care about your teams and your teams and your team. And I realized that, first of all, people need to understand themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that leaders do not do. Excellent leaders do that. They have worked on themselves. They have found out first, and it's so important to do that first before you think of your team, that they have understood how they relate to a goal, what's motivating them about a goal. And sometimes they're not motivated by goals they're given to. Yeah. So that's also a good question. How can I still motivate myself indirectly, maybe for a goal that I don't like very much at first sight? What's my relationship to everything that I do, to my tasks, to my actions? What is holding me back usually? What are some of these very classic patterns that I have, me as a leader, as one single individual person? And it's worth looking into this and being very clear, because that gives leaders the opportunity then to no longer ruminate about themselves and being stuck in their own perspective, because they are clear about that and they can move their focus to the outside world. This is when you start connecting, because if not, you just connect you to yourself all the time. So it sounds maybe a little bit paradox, but being, first of all, connecting to yourself and understanding yourself helps you to be connected then to others and less to, less concentrated on yourself, let's say. Let's not thinking about how I should say that, why I should say that, because you have some clarity. So that's the first very important step. And what I then see, out of that perspective, leaders can understand how they are different to other people or to their team members. And it's really about changing that perspective and understanding that they have also, because of the level where they are, they have certainly a different view on a team goal than their team members. Even if it's only, let's say, one hierarchy step away, it is very, very different. So they have another knowledge, other background information. And it can also be that they have a totally different personality. That's why they are the leader. Sometimes, not always, but very often it's like that. And it's really about then changing this perspective and thinking about, you can call it a dictionary. If you use a typical leader dictionary, you will find words like growth opportunities, performance, best practice, high-performing teams, agile, okay? All of that. And every organization wants that. And 70% of the world's population shies away from that, or even hates it or fears it. And that is the whole point, that those who like these words, and not all leaders like these words, but they think they have to show up as if they liked these words. So the first thing is to admit that you might not like them yourself. Which doesn't mean that you cannot embrace it, but at least my heart is not in these words. And change the dictionary. You can explain exactly the same growth project, or what for most people is worth, the same change or transformation project, which is ahead of them, by using just not the words like growth, opportunity, performance, all of these words, which are more performance and result driven. And you can go into something else. We can say this brings us more continuity. This can bring us on the midterm more stability in our jobs. Something where people can feel safe, because most people feel extremely threatened by this vocabulary. And so you need to change the wording. But for that, you need to understand that some people really, really need that. Even if you do not need that at all and you can't feel it, I think when people hear that, when they listen now, they might understand, like, yeah, right. I have so many people who show always resistance. I don't know, they procrastinate on everything. They do not do what I ask them to. I need 3 email reminders to get them out of what they're doing right now. And why is that? Well, it's exactly because of this, because you most likely have used words that are that are frightening them.
Mm,
And most people use then more of these words because they think it was not enough. And that's even worse.
yes.
At the end, people do it, but they do it without joy. They do
Yeah.
not bring their full ideas in. They do not use their whole brain
Mm-hmm.
because they just are not in it at
Yeah.
all. So they do it because they're paid for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can see like you said, the cycle that continues. You didn't respond to my leader dictionary words first time, so I'm going to throw more leader dictionary words at you. And it's, we can sit and smile and laugh about this because we're not in the situation at this given moment. But you're right, when you're on the receiving end, that's really frightening. And not recognizing too what that means for your job, for your stability, and maybe even for the project. So thank you. That's so insightful. I really, really love thinking about it in that way. And the other thing that I was thinking about when you're talking is relationships again. Like you said, even relationship with self and relationship to project and relationship to certain goals, and recognizing the importance of relationships are not just external, that if we don't have that kind of shored up and that self-reflection, our successes are likely to be short-lived, even if we have them. So
Yeah, exactly.
thank you. So this next question is one that I imagine you hear often, and I imagine this is a lot of times what clients come to you with, is this idea of this is costing us time, this is costing us money, this ineffectiveness. So what do you see? What is the cost of ineffective time and project management and teams, leaders, and organizations?
So it's hard to say because I always try also to find studies about this, and it's
Mm-hmm.
really hard to find those who are compelling. But the number that I use often, and then everybody can calculate for themselves, but it seems that 70% of business mistakes made in organizations are due to poor communication.
Wow.
70%. A client that you lose, a client that is delivered too late, where you have to pay
Mm-hmm.
fees, for example, an opportunity that's completely lost for a merger and acquisition or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, whatever. They can be big, big deals. 70% of business mistakes. And poor communication is a vast topic, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but it's always about assuming that people understand what you want from them
Okay.
and just assuming it without knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we do. And this is poor communication
Yeah.
because at the end, people do not understand.
Mm-hmm.
And people always, just because they are informed, they will not take action.
Mm-hmm.
So we always make this conclusion that when we inform somebody about the why or about what we think is the
Mm-hmm.
why, again, it's always from our perspective.
Yes. Yeah.
Then people will take action automatically.
Mm-hmm.
How could they do something different? And at the end, no, they don't, because the why is not compelling for them.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody else or something else is holding them back from taking that action. Maybe they have just very different priorities. Maybe they have a lot of fear. And this is why they don't even go for some action they need to take, because
Mm-hmm.
they think, oh, no, 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 if I do that, I might be rejected. I might fail. And
Mm-hmm.
these typical fears. We do not take this into consideration, and this is how a lot of business opportunities are lost.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you see at the end, at the bottom line results of any organization.
Yeah.
And I think the trick is really that you can't calculate it
Mm-hmm.
mathematically like you can calculate how much less cash flow you have when you have a high inventory, for
Mm-hmm.
example. Yeah, you can calculate that.
Mm-hmm.
And and I don't really like that term, these so-called soft skills
Yes.
can never be really measured. That's why they're called like
Mm-hmm.
that. But at the end, in my opinion, the difference that they make on the bottom line result is much higher. Like you said in the beginning, we take more time or more care of digital systems
Mm-hmm.
or of developing processes
Yeah.
and methods and
Mm-hmm.
all of that, and never really think about the fact that all these perfect processes and methods need to be at the end used by
Mm-hmm.
people. And if they don't take
Yeah.
action, well, then fine to have a great process, but if nobody applies it,
Yeah.
nothing happens.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that the way you framed it, the why is not compelling. Or we've made some assumptions that recognizing too, kind of going back to the audience analysis, like you said, step out of our perspective and figure out what we're asking people and how this impacts them in very real ways. And maybe ask for their opinion, right? Oh gosh. So thank you. I have so many things to think about. I'm really enjoying this. And I have two final questions for you. So this first one is kind of reflecting on either your experiences in organizations or now in owning your organization and consulting. But if you had two leadership lessons, so what are these two that either kind of you've learned and you continue to return to, or alternatively, what are some lessons that you wish the leaders you worked with or served under, what do you wish they knew?
Mhm. It comes back to what I said earlier on, is these two dimensions,
Mm-hmm.
the I and the we, the being, the doing. So focus really on yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
Take time for that whenever,
Yeah.
but it's so important.
Mm-hmm.
I wish that I was more aware when I was a leader. And I wasn't. I was more or less stumbling successfully through my career, more or less driven because I wanted to learn and because I wanted to have an interesting profile. And so, yes, I tried a lot of new things and that was great. But I could have done that really differently because very often I felt awkward, imposter syndrome in place, not confident enough. But on the outside, everybody thought I was.
Mm-hmm.
But I was certainly not authentic. And I was losing a lot of power, a lot of energy in that, a lot of worry and anxiety behind the scenes in myself. And I think many people have that.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing is really to understand, who am I? How do I relate to my job, to what I have to do? And admitting also the things that don't work well, where you're not perfect, to yourself. I mean, really admit things to yourself. Many people shy away from that. When I speak to leaders, they have this kind of fear, as if they couldn't function anymore, operate anymore, as soon as they see something which they don't like in themselves. And I think it's really important to get away from that. You can only win if you look into yourself, really. And you can only develop, like with any project, you can only develop something where you are aware what are the development areas. And so help yourself really to get out of this anxiety mode and out of this mode of, oh, I just somehow do things and I don't really feel being myself oftentimes, by understanding who you are. I think that's the biggest task, because when you have done that, and then comes the second step. And that is really about looking at others and creating just much more awareness about their reactions and learning to be emotionally intelligent and more empathetic, learning to understand what triggers them. Some are similar to me, for sure, but some are totally different. They have, why the heck are they interested in that? Or why are they not reacting to this wonderful thing that I just said?
Yeah.
And seeing this as something where you can then grow and really work with that much more deliberately and address it as well with people, the differences, and value the differences. There's no good or bad profile. So I think it's really about understanding what we always call diversity, and we love to have that. That's it. Understanding, first of all, who you are, who are the others, and how can we value all of that, how we can bring these very different strengths together to create synergies, instead of trying to push everybody into the same leader shape of being a perfect growth mindset that loves agility. Because that's really an illusion. Some people cannot be that, even if they wanted to, but they can't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's so so helpful. It reminds me of advice when I first became a faculty member. My my previous director, she took me to lunch and she's like, "You're not teaching yourself." And I was like, "Okay." And she's like, "No, stop. Listen. You don't have a classroom full of Leahs." And it took a minute to set in then. And it's been so helpful since, because things before and be like, I don't understand why you didn't turn this assignment. And of course, I've always loved school. That's why I'm still in a school, right? I'm a professor. So it is so helpful to return to that advice and remember, I'm not serving my students well if I think I'm only teaching to myself, because I am missing their goals and their needs and all of the things that make them them. and kind of see that parallel to this advice that you're offering us. And it, again, has helped me tremendously. It's very humbling, also really helpful. It's helped me to be a much better faculty member because of it. Great. And so my last question for you, so this the previous question we kind of talked about from a leader perspective. We know we spend more of our time in follower roles, and even when we are a CEO, we might have a board of directors to answer to. So for our employees, all ranks, levels, industries, in terms of embracing the unknown, becoming more comfortable with pivots, anything related to leadership and procrastination, what advice do you have for these friends?
Find out what is really important for you. It can be your values, but it can also be just needs that you have. Some people have a need for status and power. Some others have a need for stability and security, or for very connected social relationships, or for exploring new things and having adventures all the time. These are 4 very different types of profiles. What are your needs? What you really, really need at work and usually at home as well.
Yeah.
And when you understand that, then you can help yourself to better understand how you relate to the tasks that you're given, to goals that you set yourself, even in your private life.
Mm-hmm.
And ask yourself, like a marketing person, what's in it for me?
Yes. Yeah.
That's the thing. What's in it for me? And what's in it for you is probably not what's in the FAQ that comes maybe from the top of your organization. Yes, most likely not, because somebody has written that out of their perspective.
Yes.
But you have something particular. What's in it for you? And if you see, wow, there's this huge organizational change. Let's use that example because that is very often very common. And I don't know. I don't know if I can stay in my team. I don't even know if I keep my job or whatever. And you are somebody who has a strong need for security and stability, then you are really in trouble. And that's what most people face out there most of the time. And it's really important to start reflecting, and you need to become a bit creative around what's in it for me in this one. So, okay, first of all, I acknowledge I'm frightened for sure. This is really scary to me. I acknowledge that. It's not a weakness because I have other strengths. I'm maybe super reliable, so I have other strengths. But so what's in it for me ultimately? And very often in things that we don't like or don't like to do, we can't see that right away. And it's not exactly in the thing. You will not find something in the organization, the reorganization or the change as such. But you might find something that is behind that or a side effect. So really think out of the box, think broader. If there's something in it for you, something that feeds your needs, and especially when it comes to things where you have a strong resistance, but no choice than doing it because you're paid for that, because it's your job. Let's say that. If it's things you can change and not do, well, then take the deliberate decision. Be bold enough to say no, but sometimes you can't. And if you really, really can't, then it's about finding a motivation for yourself that is outside of the obvious motivation that people expect from you. And you don't have to say that to anyone what it is. It's very personal. It's really for you. Give yourself that strength, that gift, that you have something else you can hook yourself on somehow. And that gives you this power and this not enthusiasm, but at least a certain will to execute on certain tasks, to take certain actions with a bit less resistance than you would have if you hadn't thought about it at all. And I think this is important in today's world when it comes to inner balance, to be a bit more mentally healthy as well, and not to run into these extremely stressful situations that we might face mentally without reflecting on that.
Yes. And I love in your response, it's this idea. I think so often we, in these positions, we can feel like we're just kind of being tossed along, right? And bobbing along, waiting for the next wave to hit. But when we kind of spin it, we acknowledge how we're truly feeling. And like you said, we don't have to verbalize this to anyone else. We acknowledge that and then think about, too, what's in it for me. I think that's something that many employees don't often give themselves the luxury. I don't even know if we should call it a luxury, the benefit of looking at, because they're so often just to do this and this and this. I might be losing my job. I don't know, with this big change coming. I'm going to keep doing this. But like you said, I really love how much that empowers an employee to say, I'm going to shift this way and I'm going to have this new perspective. Or I didn't realize this was in it for me, but now this is something that I can keep, working toward as we navigate this situation. Thanks.
For example, it just came to
Yeah.
my mind because often people, they do that job also because they have a family and they feel like, oh my God, I have to stick to it. I have to go through all these, let's call it bad experiences where I'm forced into things. I'm really, really stressed. It's horrible, it's horrible, it's horrible. And this is the carousel of words, chatterbox in our head all the time. And instead of doing that, for example, you could more deliberately shift your focus and say, what's in it for me is that I can spend outside of that job quality time with my children, that we can still, I don't know, afford this really beautiful garden. And instead of when you are in that garden with your children, then ruminating about your job, how horrible it is, rather say, I can enjoy that. And I'm grateful because I am delivering that through what I'm doing. You give it a different quality. You give your work a different quality, give it a different sense, not like the fear of losing something, but rather like this creates the power of creating something in my life that's valuable for me. And that's maybe completely outside of your role, of your job.
Yes. And such a powerful and empowering mind shift. Oh,
exactly.
Thank you. I have truly enjoyed this conversation. I've learned so much. I cannot wait to integrate it into my classes and to continue kind of thinking about this as I do my own research and discovery. So thank you for being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you. It was great to be with you, Leah.
All right, my friends, that wraps up our conversation today. Until next time, communicate with intention and lead with purpose. I'm looking forward to chatting with you again soon on the Communicative Leader.